Alright, good morning YouTube. This is Mini back. Part 3 of my molding and resin casting. You guys have seen the first 2 parts, I hope. This third part, we're going to be focusing on doing the rubber casting. Now this is from what I do. I haven't put no resin in any of these yet. These are the 5 molds that you guys watched me make and demold yesterday. So here's what the things you're going to need in casting. You're going to need fresh, clean molds, or I should say, when you're starting casting, here's a clean molds. There's nothing on them yet. I get a big thing of popsicle sticks. You're gonna have something like a toothpicks, and you can either use toothpick. I find it handy to use an old paintbrush. I took the bristles off the front. I sanded it down to a decent sized tip like that, and then I can hold it, and I can work all my air bubbles out like that. So the toothpicks are for the air bubbles. Your paint stick would be for your paintbrush stick would be good for the air bubbles. This is what I choose to use. I use a piece of glass or something that I can maneuver, because once you put resin in the mold, you don't want to be moving your mold, because your resin, it's setting in there, and until it cures, it's a liquid and it can roll all over. So what I usually do, and I'm not going to say you guys are going to be trying to cast 5 molds at once, so get something simple that you can keep the mold itself flat, but you can pick this up and move it around, so that way you can move it around and when you're pouring your resin and whatnot. Alright, you're going to need mixing cups. Most of these mixing cups come from medicine bottles, or you can go to the hobby store or craft store. See if I can get it. Maybe a medicine shop, and I always go by this right here. I can mix up little stuff, like you see the 2.5. I can put 2.5 and then add another one to 5, then I mix it up, and I can pour a little at a time. Then trying to fill this up, trying to pour everything in, trying to chase air bubbles and stuff, I do a little bit at a time. So I always have a good stack of mixing cups. You're going to have your resin, and it doesn't matter which one you pour first, but you got to make sure you pour the right amount, and you have to have some kind of mold release. I usually spray, usually I like to get in the mood to do this. So what I do is I'll spray all the molds I'm about to fill with resin. I spray them out, and you spray them as if you were painting, a piece. I'm not going to spray it here because I don't want the mold release on my 2 projects back there. But if you just spray it like you would be spraying spray paint, you got to do it in light coats. You don't want to just flood it on there. You do all that, and then another thing that I like to use is a heat lamp. And over here to the side, I should change this up. I should put a piece of wood or something under there, but I don't. Over here to the side, I have this little corner set up over here where I have the heat lamp, and then when I turn the heat lamp on, my molds stay at a certain temperature. You don't want to get them too hot, and I do this, and right here it helps accelerate the resin. So you don't want to get in too close, because you don't want to cook the molds. You don't want to get the molds too hot. And if you stay in a series of making the molds, the resin itself will warm up your molds to a certain degree. Another thing I made, and this is just for me personally, guys, is sorry guys, I got a mold. Let me clean it out. I made a hot box for my resin, and basically it's just a cardboard box. I cut a hole in it, I put a door in it, like this. And then what I do is I take my heat lamp, I lay it right over there like that. And then since my chair is on a swivel, what I do is I do this. I'll pour my molds out, and then I put it in there, and then I just shut it and leave it. And then when I pull up, when I open everything else back up and all that, it's what I can, it's easy for to do, and it gets more light and stuff in there. Another thing you can do is like these old bases for a paint stand or old piece of wood or something. You can have that light constantly warming up your mold, and that way you're moving the plate around. You're going to move this plate around instead of that big piece of glass. So with that being said, I'm going to show you guys a couple different ways to cast resin. I'm going to start with these little molds, and then we'll heat up. We'll let the bigger, thicker molds heat up. So first cast I'm going to show you guys is, I'm going to show you that once you get your resin out and you pour it, today, let's back some of this stuff up for you guys. Tilt it down. So today, we're going to start off with the intercoolers, with the amps, small flame amps I ended up doing, and my tweeters. So if you can see, the tweeters are a bunch of, even though I kept them on strands, they're a bunch of little places. These right here are squares. This right here is more of an open thing. So I'm going to show you a few different type of castings. So right here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to fill it up to 5 with part B. I'm going to fill it up to the 10 with part A, which should be 50-50. And then another thing I forgot to tell you guys, usually I keep a paper towel. I can keep a paper towel handy. That way I can wipe off my stick and everything. So here's one way you can do it, guys. And I'm going to show you on the little amps. You stir it up for a minute or so. Once you feel it getting warm in your hand, you're going to know that the resin is curing, taking over. So you could do it like this if you wanted to. You can just pour it right over like that. Then you see I have one row left that I didn't get to. So usually what I do is I'll do this like that, and then I'll keep my stick flush with the rubber mold. Whoa. And then I just move it over like this. I just move it over like that. Now that's me pouring the mold straight over. Now it won't be able to show so much. Let's see if I can get this to move. It won't be able to show so much right there, but in a personal eye, I can see all the air bubbles. So then what I do is I take my stick like this, and I just run it back and forth like this. And by doing so, you're trying to eliminate all the air bubbles that got in there when you do your mixing and everything. And then you see that, and then I wipe off. I take my paper towel and wipe off my stick and my stirrer. Usually I just put the cups off to the back and I'll let them dry and they'll pull out. Now you see how I did that, but by pulling off like that, you'll see that, you get a slop, you get a mess coming out. Again, you could try to pick it back up and save it to your product if you want. At a certain point, this right here starts getting a gummy, getting tacky, and you don't want to move it and it will start pulling your product up. The reason why I do it like this is because I try to make use of the resin I already mixed and poured, and I try to make as less flash as I can on that outcome. Now, the other way that I pour is, oops, oh man, on camera blooper, there you guys go. I'm trying to work with my camera in front of me. I don't know why the lighting changed, but there you go. And another way I like to do it is I do small amounts. I'm going to do right there to 250 on that one. Where'd my lid go? And then pull it to 5 with the other part. Now, ESO over on Facebook, I don't think he has a YouTube channel. ESO over on Facebook he does some of his casting and stuff, and he puts a dye in it. I haven't found a dye that would work for this, so I just do mine bare. But there is a dye that you have to add it to the clear part of the resin, and then you mix it up, you get the color you want, and then you add the B side of it. But another way I do casting is like all these little spots. If I was just to pour over the top like this, it's hard to get all the air bubbles out. So what I do is I usually use a paint stick and I let it drop. Now let it drop into the small spots. Instead of trying to fill up that whole groove I'm just trying to fill in the tweeter itself. And then, you use the tilt of the cup to get what you need. Like that. That's why I use a little bit at a time. If I try to mix up a whole cup like I did, well, not a whole cup, but like if I try to make the 10 milliliters like I did with the amps, it'll start getting hard before I can get it all finished in there. Hope this thing stays in focus for you guys. And then like there, I ran out of resin. So then what I do, if you guys I can't tell if you guys can see this on your screen or not, but you see all the air bubbles that were in the ones that I just poured versus the ones that I let drip. So then if you had to chase all this, you wouldn't be able to get it all out because the cure time would set in and you'd have all these bubbles to chase out by just randomly pouring. So you got to have some kind of speed, some kind of patience. And even though I let them drop in there, I still go back and run about to try to chase all my air bubbles out. Like I said, the stuff you guys are getting, a few of you guys that I've sent stuff to, I actually wrote on the bag that these are seconds, that they would be usable and whatnot. So like John C., Brian Furlong, and Miriam and them, when I sent them guys their resin packages, I had stuff that was good and usable right out of the box. And then I even notated into them that these are second ones, but with a little help, you guys will be able to use them. So I would hate to buy resin stuff and then not be able to use it because of air marks and sinkholes and stuff. And I think Norm showed a while back, he was building a little military vehicle, and he had bought a bunch of aftermarket resin stuff, and when it arrived to his house, it was stuff he couldn't use. It was either warped or really out of proportion, or it was like had a lot of air pits and air bubbles on them. And it's disappointing when the builds that Norm does are so, man, they're so nice, they're so detailed, and to spend $15 on a piece of walkway or armor for a vehicle that once you get it and you open it up and it's basically like Norm said, it was just trash. I mean, I'm not a professional guy here, and I'm not doing this to, you know, be a business. I'm doing it to enjoy it, and I like to share to help you guys. But, you know, I'm one of those guys, just like my builds, I want to take pride in it, and I do not want to offer a technique or a tip or a product to someone that I myself wouldn't use. So I'm just showing you guys, you know, the way I do it. And even though you see I just mixed the second part of resin, most resin, before it's cured all the way, can be laid back over the top of it. Can be laid back over the top of each other, and it melts itself back in at a point. Like, I can't take a piece I casted yesterday and then come back over the top of it, you know. And then once I got all those filled in, you can go a little bit heavier on the tweeters, because now I've gotten all the tweeters themselves filled in. And then I just, you know, I do my little runabout, and that way there. Again, I wipe off my tool. And since I have a little bit of resin left and it's not hardened up yet, usually what I do is I go by and, you know, I'll pick a product that I know I can get it in there. And like, if you let it drip in there like so, you're less likely to have to chase a lot of air bubbles. And then, like on the traction bars that I'm doing here, it's got a mounting bracket and it's got a rubber remount bracket. So most of the times, you have to make sure you get all the air bubbles out of that and get just the rest of that in that. And then you can just come back here, and I'm a firm believer in, if you got the time to smooth it out and to work it out, it's best, because it's a lot less flash and cleanup once the part is ready. Then even though right here is just some runoff, I still always go back in there and I make sure that I get all the pieces ran and everything. Well, I'm going to pause this here for a minute. You can start seeing these tears cure up, and you can see it getting sticky, you know. And I'm going to pause this for a minute. I'm going to finish pouring out this. I will switch this into my warm box. Once I get a whole set of molds set up like so, I turn around and I'll put it in the warm box and let it get hot. And then by that time for that light to warm up the resin to cure and to heat from there, my next set of molds will start drying quicker the more you want to proceed on doing it. So let me pause this for a few minutes, and I'll be right back. I'm going to try to cut out the boring stuff, so just give me 1 second. Alright, now all 3 molds are poured, and I chased all the bubbles and everything. You can see this one here is you know, pretty much just over the time, but it'd still be soft. If you was to unmold this right now, you could damage some of the details just by the pressure of your finger, and you can warp them by trying to pull. So that's one reason why it has a base. So what I do now is I'll just pick it up over here, and then I just will open my door. I open up the box door. I'll get these out of the way, and then I'll put these in there, and then here in a few we'll pull those out, and we'll get to see what those look like. And then now, with the same way, I hadn't sprayed none of this stuff yet, so give me 1 second, and I'm gonna do some focus. I'm gonna do some spraying. That's your guys' elevator music while I'm taking this quick spray break. And so far, I hope you guys have enjoyed what you've seen and are thinking about doing your own thing. just a little light coat. You can't even tell I used the light coats anyway. Now when you're doing stuff like this, now you got to make a little thicker amount of resin, because these right here are so deep and the temperature is built up pretty nice on there. So what I'm going to do with this one is I'm going to go to 10 on this. Do it 10. Try to keep this in focus for you guys. And then with it being 10 on part B, you need to go 10 on part A. So you got that right there. And then you come back and you stir it and you mix it for a few seconds. Now I always like to work away from me and then back towards me. That way, you know, I don't put my arm right over the top of resin and whatnot. Like I said again, I'm building, I'm using a bigger mold. So I'm going to pour these batteries right here. And you can see, even though it's got a big amount, I still like to control it. Doing it with the stick like this helps lessen the chance for air bubbles and whatnot. So it kind of like slows the flow and lets it fill in more. Now I'm going to show you guys what I've done here is I ran it out of the mold. I ran it out of resin. So I started to get that right there filled up, but then I didn't make it. So what I still do, I still chase, and with it being all this amount of detail in here, you want to make sure you walk the whole mold with whatever you choose to air bubble everything with. You try to get all that stuff out and get all its glory out of there. That's one reason why we want to do this, is you eliminate the cost of buying a kit over and over, and plus, we want the details, because if we didn't want the details, then we can just be putting pieces of matchboxes or something in here, just with no detail. So I still chase all the air bubbles. I'll still skim it like I would. And then what you do, you just make, get back here, you just make another thing of resin. And I could have poured 30 resin, but I'd like to do it at 10, because if I didn't have a chance to get everything all together, I didn't want to be able to waste resin either. So, and that sucks. And then if you guys can see on the camera, since these molds here were in the light already, you can see them starting to cure already. You can see the thickness coming to them, and they're losing their clearness. But you can still go back over what we've already poured, and it will melt back into each other, because it's not gotten to that state yet. Well, I'm going to pause this. I'm going to finish doing all the molds for this one. And when I'm ready to switch this box with the other box, I'll be right back. Okay, guys, one more thing I'm going to try to show you on the casting part, and then on my next segment will be the uncasting. You can see I poured some rest of those molds there, and even the back battery molds are starting to harden up. I'll still put these under the heat. I used up a little bit of resin that I wanted to, and just a few more parts. That's the beauty part about resin casting. You don't have to use the whole mold if it's just a few parts like you see back there. But here's another way I wanted to show you. See this right here? See if it will focus. Now these are steering wheels that I made from Model Car Garage photo etch centers, and then I added plastic to them to thicken them up, and then I made my own ring out of using some jewelry loops. Now you see how thin this is? Well, one way to do these and get a good clean casting on these is I'm going to put this on the glass so that way I don't have to move it. You want to mix just a little bit of resin. So the smallest I can do is a 2.5 milliliter. See if it will show up. The smallest I can do is at 2.5. So what I do is I pull it up, and the 2.5 plus 2.5, because the 50-50 mix is going to be 5. So I do this, and you mix it up like you regularly do, but this is the same process I used to do if you guys do your molds and you make like fan belts and stuff to go with the motor or pulley system or something. When they're thin like this and you're trying to get the detail, what I do is I mix it up, and instead of pouring it on there, see if I can't keep this in focus. Instead of pouring it on there, I rub it on there. And by doing that, it's like, I'm going to say it's like making peanut butter and jelly. You're actually forcing, when they're in a thin mold like that, you're actually forcing the resin into the drop crevice. And so you just basically, like, you know, spreading jam and peanut butter or mayonnaise or something on a sandwich. So, and then you're just washing it in there. You're swiping it in there, I should say. And then, you know, you just do it. You're going to waste resin on a mold like this, so if you have a use for it, but I just do it in the smallest. Instead of trying to pour it and get it all in there and hopefully you don't get no air bubbles, this is how I do it. You can see it filled in there. You can take an overview of it, and this is when the toothpicks come in pretty good. I just go in there and do a quick run over, make sure I've chased all my air bubbles out of it. And then when this comes out, I'll put this in the lamp box now, and then, you know, we'll show you the outcome. It keeps the steering wheels thin, easy to round off the backside, plus you get the details and whatnot. I got a few carburetor molds here I can use this up on. You'll see once your resin starts to harden up, it goes from like pouring milk to like pouring syrup. So that's when you kind of want to, you know, walk away from it. When you guys are learning this, you guys are going to waste. I'm trying to teach you guys the best way I can, not to have, you know, wasteful product, but you're going to waste the resin. So let me pause this right quick, and I'm going to do some switching, and I'll be right back. Okay, here it is. I took the 3 molds that we had. I pulled them out of the lamp box, and they're going to be quite warm. If you do a lamp box like that, they're going to be really warm, so be careful. But they still can handle them. If you can see my molds and everything right here, and then basically all I do is I walk an edge like this, and then I try to pull them all off together, what will come together, and then you have to go out there and do the next set. But and here's your pieces. You know, you get the same, if you do it right and you chase your air bubbles, you'll get the same amount of detail. Here's the traction bars. You'll get the detail that your master were. So let's you can do the same for this. I just walk in. When they're thinner molds like I made these, they're easy to come off. And then you guys can see right there, you know, that you're getting all the flame. You're getting all the flame details. And then usually what I do, if I'm getting in the mood to cast a bunch of these, usually I run about 5 casts per mold, and I just keep them in separate piles. But by doing it thin, like I'm showing you guys, you pour your resin, then you swipe it off. Once I pulled all this stuff apart, you can see how easy it's going to be to clean up. There's very little cleanup to do. Basically, I can just, when it's thin like this, you can just go back over here like this, and you just run your finger through it, you know, and then boom, it's ready to put in my parts box. Just like that. And then, you know, you get all, if you guys look, you know, look how many of those I poured out, and very few, just that one spot. I got this one right here with the very tiny air bubble, out of all the rest of them there that don't. And like I said, you're going to have to work at it, pace yourself, and it will come to you guys. So I hope this is what you guys need to do. And once it's hardened like this, sometimes it could still be soft, but you guys, you can start taking this apart, cleaning it up, putting it away where you need it. If you're just doing little parts here and there for, say, a build, once it gets hard, it's gonna be hard. With the Alumilite, it don't gas out, so you could wash your part up. You could wash your part up and actually put it to use in your build once it's hardened. Different colors depending upon how well you've mixed your resin. So you can see some of your resin is going to be discolored from each other, but that doesn't mean nothing's wrong. It's just the way the temperature at which it cures at, and how much you've actually mixed at that time. Your thicker items usually seem to harden up quicker than your thinner items, because the conductive heat between the thickness helps out a lot. But I hope this was a nice little series for you guys. This is Mini. I think I'm done with this series. This is after all the 5 molds that I created. These are how many mixing cups I went through to pour the resin. And like I showed you guys, you know, I do a little bit at a time. I just let all this harden up, and then you could squeeze your cup and it pulls right out. When you have overflow, go to your bench like what I have here in front of me. If you're on a glass piece like I am, you just use your razor blade, just cleans it all up. If it gets on your skin, unfortunately, it's a punk to get off. So what I usually do is just put a sanding drum on my Dremel, and